Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. You're at the spot, the place, where the conversation is pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Did you bring your thinking caps? It's time to put them on, because the conversation starts now. Welcome to On the Edge with April Mahoney Brains. How are you today? I hope you're doing good. You will be if you're not by the time we get finished, because we are going to Los Angeles, my old neck of the woods. We're going to be talking to Suzanne Daniels here at the place where the conversations are pointed, the guests are sharp, and the responses are never dull. Suzanne has a broad spectrum and a wide range when it comes to financial legacy strategies. We're going to talk about something different. Everybody talks about the will and the trust, and they think that that is cemented in gold once you have that. But baby, we're about to tell you the real deal, because there are some pitfalls and there are some things that you need to be aware of. You think because you've retired and you've gotten this little document that you did 15 years ago, that nothing has changed, that it can't be challenged, that situations and relationships have not changed. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. She's got a law degree, so she knows she's talking about, and financial services. Let's welcome her to the show. How are you, Suzanne Daniels?
I am great, thank you, April. Hello, brains. Hope you're doing well today.
Well, they will be after you give them the real deal, because, see, they got all this trickery going on. They just think that, like I said, you think because you have that. This made me scratch my head and pull out my documents and look at it and say, hey, what is new? Things have changed. The financials, the constructs have changed. Property values have changed. People's health, their it's just a whole plethora of stuff. So before we get into that, tell us a little bit about how you show up in the world.
First and foremost, I show up as a South African now living in Los Angeles.
From one jungle to the next, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. When I'm not lawyering and financialing, I am a mom to a 26-year-old performer, and that's why we live in Los Angeles. Yeah, so that's how I show up in the world.
So how did you get your start, number one, with law, and then how did you springboard over to finance?
I actually, I'm one of those weird people. When I was 4 years old, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer.
Wow.
I'm 56 now and I'm still a lawyer. I grew up in apartheid South Africa. I think that had a lot to do with it, where the color of my skin was, um, outlawed. So different schools, different living conditions, all of that, different sort of predictions for how your future would go, made me more determined to actually serve people. I spent I have spent 30 plus years as an attorney. I can't believe that at this stage of my life. Coming to the US, I needed to sort of find a different avenue to use my experience. I started out in tax consulting when I landed here. So, doing all of that, then also working with an estate planning attorney, realized that, estates and finances actually go together. And that made me then decide to get my financial services license so that I could actually serve clients better, because what was missing is, I felt as a lawyer, we were only looking at the documents,
Right.
whereas what people really needed was a holistic strategy as to what's present, what's past, what's future. And
Right.
that's how I started developing my methodology. Well, it's based on my lived experience and also all those years in law and finance and business.
Wanted to jump into colorism really quickly. They considered you dark skinned and African, because you're still pretty light skinned in the melon. I mean, when you look at the wide spectrum of people of color, and they gave you a hard time.
Yes, well, in the US terms, I'm mixed race.
Mm-hmm.
So in South Africa, I was classified as colored,
Mm.
and that is sort of not white. So anything that's not white is black and treated differently.
Wow. I have some friends that are in South Africa, and they say that they really don't feel that they're discriminated against because they're segregated. If this is all you know and this is your population, it's okay. You only feel that when you migrate into other things. And people like to say that they're African American, but that's Africana if you come from other countries. I just don't know why people, Suzanne, still waste their time on that because there's not a cotton picking thing that we can do about how we get here or the color that we are. And we're so hated. But somebody told me in my ear it's because we're the chosen. I'm just saying, and to whom much is given, much is required. So let's
Exactly.
talk about the giving and the requirements on giving. Now, one of your zones of genius is wealth protection. That's wills, that's trust, that is medical directives, that's just the documents that you need to solidify your legacy. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's from the legal side. Those documents are very important if you want to make sure that things happen the way that you intend them to happen.
That you want them to happen because
Yes.
folks will contest some stuff. So, Brains, I'm gonna bring you up to speed. Let's number one. Let's talk about having the conversation. Having the conversation with your family members when you tell them that they not getting shit. Sorry. Uh, or having the conversation and saying, hey, look, this is what I have. This is how I want it to be allocated. That's a tough conversation. Number one, folks figure, oh, well, if I tell them what I have and what I'm going to give them, they're going to ice me out. They're going to take me out. Or they're going to be bitter. Well, I'd rather for you to be bitter now than bitter later. At least there's no unrealistic expectations. How do we have that conversation about what our legacy is and what we're going to be leaving someone in a will or a trust?
Well, I always start that conversation with my clients by telling them they're not legally obligated to leave anything to their family.
Did you hear that, Brains? You don't have
You
to leave
know,
nobody nothing. You
yeah,
live in an animal shelter.
exactly. So I said to people that if you decide to leave your entire estate to the animal shelter, you can. Um, what I basically say to people is, you also need to make sure that you are able to live well. Okay, you worked hard for the money, so make sure that you live well. It's not only about death and dying. Whatever is left, you need to think carefully about what is it that you want to leave. Is it money? What do you want people to do with that money? So before you have the conversation, actually think for in your own, strategize about what is it that you want them to do? Because obviously, in certain cases, you probably the first generation to have so much money, and you want to make sure that it has meaning for the next generation. So make sure that you can be prescriptive because it's your legacy. So it's not the easiest conversation to have. You're also not obligated to share all the details.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So you don't have to say to cousin April, I'm going to leave you $25,000
mm-hmm,
and you're going to have to use it for that. You can also just talk to them about this is what I plan to do with my money. Would you be okay with that?
mm-hmm.
And they actually do have the election to take up the inheritance or not. So if you put conditions on them, that's also okay. There's no right or wrong. I know some mummies try and control from beyond the grave, and some daddies do, but It really is more for you to take a step back and think, what is it that I want to do?
Right. And
And
you
what,
have to say, okay, look, what if you, again, like you said, you've worked hard for this. I'm all about the spin down. Okay,
yes.
generational wealth, absolutely. But the currency and the trajectory of the economy is changing. And I told my daughter, I want to set you up so I can see what you're doing now, that you can enjoy it, that I can help you navigate it so that you were able to retain it. I don't want you to get a boatload of money and insurance policy, blah, 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 and then you go trick it off, or you let your friends manipulate you and trick it off. Like you've never had anything in your life. And I have sacrificed. Never went on a vacation, barely got my nails done. My house is in shambles, all of that to leave something for you. I deserve what I deserve. And I'm going to take my seat at the table. But I want to share with you and I want to have that conversation with you, a mature conversation, because I also want to see your reaction.
Mm,
That's
that
that's a key indicator right there to see how we're gonna slice and dice this. The look on your face, you sucking your teeth, if you're excited, if you're just blank. I want to see your reaction.
that's a more constructive way to have the conversation, I would suggest, you know, about finding out what people's values and aspirations are, so it can give you a good gauge. You know, you don't have to be specific about what you're going to do. You can say, I'm putting my will and trust together, or I'm doing this, I'm working with an estate planner. These are the things that they've asked me. What do you think about it? Um, you don't have to tell them, I'm going to leave you this, because yes, some people think that's a promise and an obligation, but really it isn't. And I always caution people to be that specific in the conversation because you are entitled to change your mind.
And your
And
finances may change. I mean, it may be where you have to get a second mortgage on the property and there's nothing left. And the home,
and you may need care, long-term
right,
care, so you may develop an illness. So you want to have a plan that keeps up with all of that as well.
right. Now, this is another thing. When people have stepchildren or their own children, what they do is they'll say, okay, if anyone contests this will, you don't get anything or you get $1. They can still contest the will, can't they, Susan?
Yes, of course they can. Anything is contestable. We live in an extremely litigious society. Just, that doesn't mean that they're going to win,
Right,
but that doesn't stop them from contesting. You have to be absolutely clear about what your intentions are and what your wishes are and document that properly from a legal standpoint so that it becomes sort of watertight. If you're trying to outmaneuver someone, your will is not the place to do that.
right, right,
Play
exactly.
chess or something.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Um, but be clear because what you're doing in your will and your trust is you setting up the people for the next phase when you are no longer here, rather than, trying to manipulate them.
Right. And folks get so ugly. They get so ugly. I'm I'm telling you, I've got and I'll call her out. I got a niece right now that felt that she was entitled to everything. There wasn't anything. Number one. Number two, when somebody dies, that's not your payday. You know. Number three, you're grieving. And so emotions are very high. But folks will go in the house, they will clean out the house, they'll take Aunt Martha's china, her TV, all of that, and they just barely got Aunt Martha to the morgue. What happens when people do that? When they supersede a situation, they just go in and clean everything out. Can you file legal charges against them? Because essentially that's theft.
Yes, you can. And that's why it's really important that you have a very, very strong administrator, executor, or trustee, because that person really has a fiduciary duty to take care of your assets. I know that's brains, that's a huge word, but basically what it means is that you're a custodian of the assets. You're not the owner. So
Mhm.
you need to make sure that whoever's wishes you are carrying out are carried out. So if someone steals, they're actually stealing from the departed person, and you have rules. I actually have a family that I'm busy working with now where that happened. Sons cleaned out bank accounts, all of those things. And I sat the trustee down and explained what her duties were. And she actually appreciated the fact that she could lay charges against them, even though it was siblings. She actually went through and did that because she appreciated the sort of importance of carrying out her dad's wishes.
And that's a big responsibility.
It's
I
huge.
know I asked someone one time and they asked me, would you consider being my executor? Number one, ask them. Don't just
Mm,
name somebody, because that executor can decline to do that, and then it go back to the bank, and then or it goes into probate, and you have a big mess. Have a conversation with the person. Let them also know that they will be financially compensated for being the executor. But you've got to deal with the mortgage company. You've got to deal with all of the contents inside the house. You got to deal with the contentious family. Um, all of these things, it's a big responsibility to be the executor. The executor, again, is the person that is facilitating. You're not the boss, and that is not your stuff. Am I right?
that's quite correct. Very correct.
Because you can
It's
be sued
important
as
to
well.
remember, brains.
And the executor can be sued too for misappropriation.
Yes, it's a very big responsibility. I actually now have workshops about just what it means to be an executor or a trustee because people don't understand that. And as you say, I wholly support what you're saying about having that conversation. That's one of the most important conversations to have. People often want to make their children trustees. And I always say to them, are they mature enough? They would be grieving at the same time. Would you want them to go through this? And, have the conversation to actually, because dealing with paperwork is, while you're grieving, can either focus you or derail you.
And you have the choice of having a fiduciary. Now, a fiduciary is a third party. You pay that person to. You're not going to get from up under paying anybody. So get that taste off your palate. But if you have children that are underage, or if you have, you know, a sketchy family, or if you want this to be allocated and no one is pointing fingers at the other, you can have a third party fiduciary that handles that. Can you explain to my audience what that responsibility is like?
Brains, then you would be appointing a company that would do that, or someone like me as an attorney to do that. You'd pay a fee. So, that either you would arrange with that company that it's paid up front or contingent on the value of your estate at the time. There are various ways of doing that, but their duties are specifically to wind up your estate in the most efficient manner and according to your wishes. So you would spend time with that person or that designated person in the company. And if that person is no longer there, the company at least would take control and be the company that you have contracted with and make sure that your duties are carried out
And make
in
sure
there.
that the attorney's office or organization has a succession plan. Let me tell you, I did my will and trust. And after talking to some great, smart, heady brains like Susan, I went back and looked at my documents. I said, I need a refresher. Okay. It was like 15 years old. Things have changed since then. The laws have changed. I go back and that joker done died, bless his heart, with no succession plan. I didn't know where. Now, luckily, I had a copy of my documents and understand that once you get these documents, they are not recorded by the county recorder. They're private, confidential information. You have to retain a copy of that. Uh, put it in a safety deposit box, send it to somebody else in another state, in addition to keeping your own copy. And if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have known that he had passed away. And if I needed to go back to that attorney, I didn't know. Now, that's not everybody's situation, but sometimes it is. You want to check in with your attorney every 3, 5 years, go over your documents every 3, 5 years, spend the money to go in and have someone like Suzanne revisit that. Do you find that that's important, Suzanne?
Very important. I actually tell people to look at it yearly now as they review their financial affairs. Just check. You don't have to go through the document in detail, but just make sure that does it still reflect your life circumstances? Because people die, people get divorced, people change jobs. What else? They have more children,
And their
you know,
assets change.
and they sell their house, or they redo their financial portfolios. So everything changes, and that means that your documents need to change to reflect that reality.
Give us an idea of a, basic will and trust. Everyone's different. They've got different assets and all that, but what are we looking at?
Basic will and trust, you start at about $2,000. Because remember, that's basic estate planning. I know here in Los Angeles, the prices start at about $4,000. But if you're really doing basic, you could get away with putting it in place for $2,000.
But four
Uh,
thousand, and you've got 300,000 in assets, and that could just be the house alone.
well, let me give you a math equation, April. 500,000 average value of a house. We know that's not true. Houses in California are worth more, but average 500,000. Probate costs on a $500,000 estate, $75,000.
You're at a deficit.
Mhm. So, and in some cases, you have to sell the house to pay the probate costs.
Oh, now let's talk about step parents and stepchildren and exes. Wow. Okay. Let's start. This was brought to my attention that was really interesting. So, say for example, of course, you're married, and your children are married, and you pass away, and you have left your estate to your child. Well, if your child passes away, their spouse would inherit the inheritance because it's common law, or that's how it's set up. But what if you never liked that daughter-in-law? uh, what if you have stepchildren, or he has stepchildren, and she supersedes them? Is there language that can be put in this document to protect the assets so that the children get it, and the step, or the wife, the in-law, doesn't absorb all of the benefits from the estate? Does my question make sense?
Yes, it does. I've actually been dealing with a matter like that
Oh, see, I
recently.
tell you, brains is working.
Um, what you need to do, there's obviously, yes, there is language to protect that, but you need to be very specific. Even as the person guarding the inheritance, you need to make sure that that inheritance is directed to be excluded from any community of property.
Mm.
I would also recommend, just as an added safeguard, put in place some postnuptial, prenuptial agreement that excludes any inheritances if it's specifically large or of value that you want to do that. And make sure that there's a direct sort of ring fencing of the inheritance. Um, Sometimes it's not as tangible as like cash, then you'd want to make sure that it's ring fenced and protected properly. Otherwise, it will, if it's not designated as an inheritance, it will become part of the general community estate.
And a lot of times we love our stepchildren. We absolutely do. You know, you stepped in, you've built a foundation, you've built a relationship with them, but sometimes there is the illusion that they are equal to the biological.
Yeah, the law does not sort of see them as equal to the biological in where there's no will in place, but they do have certain rights. So you'd want to make sure if it depends on the relationship, as you say. So if you want to make sure that they do benefit, you need to specify that. If you don't want them to benefit, there's nothing preventing you from excluding them.
So say
Just be
for example,
clear.
okay, but say for example, you are the stepchild and you have carried the name, you have done all the duties and the loving and the responsibilities of a biological child. The person actually dies, but they have a succession plan of other family members. Okay. Would the stepchild be able to contest any of that? So say
Like,
for example, okay, let me try to clear that up just a little bit.
mm,
Okay, you are Suzanne, and Suzanne um, doesn't have any biological children, but she has a stepchild. But she has nieces and nephews and uncles and cousins. Would they supersede that? Would they be entitled to the inheritance because of the line of succession?
they'd be entitled if there's no document in place.
Mm,
So if there's no will or trust or anything in place, the family members would be entitled because that's how the law works.
okay.
Okay, but if the person had put in place the will and the trust and it goes to the stepchild, there's nothing that the other family members can do.
There's nothing that they can do but make their
But they
life.
can they can make life hell. But I'm talking more from a legal point of view. They can't say the law's wrong. They can contest the will, they can do whatever they want to, but if your wishes are clear, then those will prevail.
What happens if you just say, the hell with it? I'm not doing a will, I'm not doing a trust, I'm dead, I don't care what happens. Then, I mean, you look at people like Prince that died and just had this massive estate uh, and just left a mess for everybody. What happens in that situation? Does it go back to the state?
Well, the state actually it went through a system called probate,
Mhm.
and the state actually determined that's why it took so long because of obviously everybody contested, everybody wanted a piece. Cousins 16 times removed came out of the woodwork. And everybody lay claim to the estate. Now, probate, it's administered by the courts. It's a public system, so anybody can get up in court and say, "I have an interest in that estate," and the court is obligated to give you a hearing. So, in sort of like Prince's example, no will, no trust, nothing in place. Um, that went through lots of disputes, lots of claims, and that delayed. I think it took about 10 or 12 years to wind up his estate.
And a lot of money and assets were lost.
And taxes.
Because yeah, because you still have to pay the taxes on that.
Mhm.
Who absorbs the taxes? Whoever gets the final judgment.
Well, the estate, so the estate is like a separate legal person, like the estate of Prince, because there was no one designated, so the court appointed a probate attorney would have administered the estate, so he would have been responsible for getting all the money, etc., and then paying the IRS, paying the whoever needed to be paid before the money would go to the beneficiaries. Now, that process gets followed in any estate winding up or estate administration. But this one took a bit longer because of all the contestation. The rules of the state were followed. So the government gets to decide what happens to your money.
Hmm.
And I'll give you the other example of you talk about Prince who had nothing in place. Then there was Michael Jackson
Oh gosh.
who had everything. He had a detailed trust in place, but he forgot to put the assets into the trust. So while his wishes were very clear, he did not put his assets into the trust. So his estate still went through probate.
Okay. Assets change. You know, you acquire, you lose some. what do you do? Like, again, like I said, you review your documents.
Yeah, you review your documents, you remove them. You see, the trust is either the owner or the beneficiary, and so you just move them around.
All right. Let's talk about prenups. That is popular. Okay. Everybody want a prenup. I don't care if you got a 1929 old Ford Chevy and you had that before you got married. They want a prenup on it because they don't want you to get it. Explain to us, what is a prenuptial agreement?
A prenuptial agreement happens before you get married. You take a look at your assets, what you have before the marriage, and what you want to keep separate. So it's basically a contract with your future spouse that certain of your assets will be outside of the community of property and that will be dealt with individually by you.
Okay. But people say, well, we had a prenuptial agreement that if we did not stay married for 5 years, you're going to get $1 million or you'll get $2 million. So again, it's about the language.
Yes, so that's the contract. So you can put that in the contract and say, okay, if we stay married for 5 years, I'll pay you $1 million in cash.
And get the taxes paid on that too, Brains.
Yes.
Dollars.
So you've got to bear in mind, what happens if we get stay married for 10 years and then I decide I don't want to be married anymore.
Right, right. Now let's talk about what used to be known as common law. You have lived with this person. This used to be more prevalent. I shouldn't say more prevalent, equally as prevalent in the LGBTQ community because they purchase homes, they've traveled, they have dogs, and then when the other person, their lover, dies, a lot of times they're not even allowed in the room to see them for their last request. They're fighting with the family for the property, which they never put a dime into it. But when you are not married, or again, you are common law spouse, 5 years, 10 years, what's the framework look like on something like that?
Um, I am afraid that the law is a little bit antiquated around that. So I generally advise couples to put in place the necessary agreements. It's really important to put them in place, partnership agreements. Um, when you purchase a house, make sure that it's recorded how it's purchased, who's has an interest in it. You can make sure that gets recorded properly with the person on the deed, or if you're going to, just make sure that it's documented and make sure that you provide for what happens to it should something happen to either one of you. I'm dealing with that kind of partnership now. People are not married, they bought a house together. They both put in place that if either one of them passes away, the other one is entitled to that share. If they decide to sell it, if it's they were they both engineers, so they decided that if they sell the house and there's a profit of a certain percentage, then above that would go to to the children that the partner had from a previous marriage. So they've worked out what happens, and that requires certain mature level of maturity, I might say, but
Exactly.
also a very sort of sober look at, okay, the one person doesn't have children, the other one had children from a previous marriage, the two of them got together, and okay, what happens to this asset that we've worked so hard for? And they had the conversation. It wasn't easy. It's taken 3 months to get to a stage where we will sign the documents before Thanksgiving. And that's why I typically work with people for 3 to 6 months to get their stuff in order.
Because you got to extract the emotion.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
You got to look at it as if you were dead. You're already deceased.
Well,
Um,
it's not only death, April. I
yeah,
also try and make sure that people understand that you're dealing with assets that you are using on a daily basis. So while you're making sure that there's some provision for what happens when you die, what happens if you cannot live to the standard that you're living right now?
Right. If you get disabled.
Ill, if you get disabled, if you are not able to speak for yourself, what happens? Are you going to, do you want to live in the house? Do you want someone, how would you want your living conditions to be should something happen to you where you slip and fall and now need a wheelchair? Do you want to be in an institution or do you want to stay in the house?
Right.
You know, because that takes different kinds of costs. So, really, when you think of estate planning and all of these things, think of it as a strategic plan for your life.
Right. Right. Because things will happen and they will change. And then you, again, may be incapacitated where you can't make those decisions. That's
Yes,
why I know people, uh, him and ha, when they talk about a medical directive. A medical directive does not mean that April can pull the plug on you. A medical directive is saying that April can speak on my behalf as to my wishes that I have already laid out, like do not resuscitate or yada yada, whatever that language looks like.
yes,
It's not the one that says, oh, okay, she can pull the plug. If you have said, if I get to a certain point and you do not want to be resuscitated, fine. If you've exhausted all of these different options, April will have, the ability to speak on my behalf and say, okay, this is my wishes. Am I correct with that, Suzanne?
very correct. And it really is your directive while you are still able to make those decisions for the person to enact when you are not able to speak for yourself.
And that goes also for organ donations. You want to be very clear with that too.
Yes,
Uh,
and sometimes people don't want to do that. Also, be very clear about things like funeral arrangements,
mhm.
what needs to happen to your body, and those kinds of things, because there are lots of family disputes about those, different religious practices, different beliefs. So
Folks
make
will
sure.
set up a folks will set up a GoFundMe to have you buried, and they didn't had you cremated by the county.
Yes.
So there's some trickery there too. But what you have to know in your heart is that you did the best that you could while you were here in this meat suit, and that you only pray that you are at the gates of heaven, and all of this stuff is passe. But it's so important that why do you want to be the disruptor? The disruptor. I know from personal experience. My brother passed away. He had music rights. He still has music rights. He performed with some of the world's greatest. And I, being the aunt and the smart one, said, hey, let me help you guys. Oh, no, no. They thought that I was going to come in and try to take over. My name was never going to be on anything. Now they've lost everything. None of his music rights. That was his legacy for his children, for his children's children, and his great grandchildren. But, I'm not going to argue with you. If my name is on it, that means that it's for me. But to spend my little money to argue with you and let the probate court take a third of that off the top, um, I really don't see the point. If you want your family members to have what you have worked for, that you feel they deserve, if you love them, go ahead and make the decision. Now, some people don't go as far as getting the trust, they just give the will. What's the pros and cons of that?
A will is fine if you have a simple estate. It still goes through probate. Okay. The moment you start having a house, bank accounts, insurance policies, financial investments, you want to use a trust because, firstly, it avoids probate, but it also allows for certain sort of like asset protection strategies. It also allows for the beneficiary to receive the house without having to pay certain taxes.
Mhm.
So you've got to be smart about it in terms of you don't want to leave someone an asset and make them financially in a worse off position just because they need to keep this asset. So I always ask people, around, um, you'd see from my framework that I use the keep more, grow more, and leave more. And I'm saying, is it liquid enough to actually, can this person actually take up this asset? Because there are property taxes, there are maintenance on the house. If they sell the house, they would have to pay some taxes on it. So, you want to be able to let them receive it in a position and put them in a position that they can actually afford this asset that you are leaving them.
A couple other quick questions. The reverse mortgage, that's very popular now because, again, if you are a single person or you need those assets and your house is paid for, or you have a very, very low balance on it, and you want to reverse that and now start making that asset work for you. What happens with that? Because a lot of people, I know you can't go into detail because everybody's situation is different, but just overall, what is that and what does that mean? Because a lot of people are doing it now and there's a lot of trepidation.
I work with reverse mortgage specialists because that's not an area that I am quite familiar with. But from a principal perspective, you can actually take out the equity in your house and use that to fund your retirement or the end of year using your asset, and it only gets paid back on your passing. But there's various ways of structuring that. So when people express an interest in using that in their estate plan, I always refer to one of the specialists in
But
my
the
team.
bottom line is if you take out uh, equity from your property, let's just use round figures. Say it's $100,000 and you utilized $50,000. There's $50,000 that's there, but there's still $50,000 that's owed. So
Yes.
when the person inherits the property, don't think that you got it free and clear. You got to
No.
pay back that $50,000 that Aunt Martha lived off of
y-
and the $50,000. So you're still back at $100,000. Am I right?
Well, the estate will have to pay whatever is owed, and then you would get the balance. So if there's those and you want to clear it, that's why I would ask Aunt Martha, have you made provision for that $100,000 that you are planning to take out? Because that's how you create the liquidity so that your beneficiary is not in a deficit position.
Because the house might be worth 500,000.
Yeah.
So you're still up. Capital gains.
Well, the capital gains is huge, and that's why the trust is a good mechanism for that, because that allows for the person to inherit without the capital gains.
Really?
Yes. So it really depends how it's structured, and that's what makes the trust so important when you have substantial assets.
Right. Now, um, what else I wanted to ask you? I could talk to you forever about this kind of stuff, but let's talk about your three pillars when you're working with your clients. Explain that to my brains.
Well, brains, what it is I call it the three pillar wealth optimization model because it's all about, creating that peace of mind while you're now. So we would look at these three pillars. The first one is keep more. So we look at how tax efficient are you? Are you structured correctly? If you're a business owner, are your personal assets protected from your business assets? Those kinds of things. Lots of people now have side hustles. So we need to make sure that all of these things are protected and structured correctly so that you can actually keep more of the money that you earn. We have high tax burdens, interest rates are high, but they're coming down shortly. But you need to be able to deal with that. So we look at that, and do you have income protection, retirement provision, savings? Do you have children that need looking after? So basically, is your financial house, solid? If it's not, identifying the gaps and making sure that there's a plan then to grow more of that money so that your financial house becomes more stable and solid as you go along in life. And also, as you acquire assets, are they in your most optimized fashion? Um, you know, using insurance, using tax credits, using um, loan paybacks, etc. Do you have those plans in place? So that's how it's sort of growing your money so that you can actually live the lifestyle that you want to. And then also looking at what kind of legacy do you want to leave? How do you plan to get there so that you can make sure that what you've spent your lifetime building up and growing is actually left in an optimal way as well.
Hmm. Uh, and I forgot to include this. The new thing is crypto.
Mm.
Is that just an asset that you would put in your portfolio?
Yes, is it an asset? There are specific ways, depending on the size of the portfolio, as to how you would protect that.
Okay, but is that something separate now, or is that just included in the assets?
It can be included in the assets, it's not necessarily separate, but in any estate plan, depending on how much, I have had some clients who've had their entire retirement savings in crypto. So I wouldn't do that. But
Yeah,
they've had
it's a lot of untangling and then a
yes.
lot of volatility.
So, but we then protected it in a particular way. So, there's those kinds of things. If people want to do that, you have to then make sure that you can manage the risk.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, good. Now, let me ask you some fun questions because we've done the deep dive, I think, and I hope that we have answered questions for you, brains, that have not been addressed before. We talk about, again, a whole laundry list of items that we could tick off, but the most important thing is to get yourself together, write it down, tell people. Now, oh, that's another thing. Can they go to the stationery store and get one of these wills, or can they write a document, sign it, have it notarized, and that be considered legal?
They can, but I would always say, you get what you pay for.
Mhm.
If you have a simple, straightforward, I'm just leaving my cat to April, that's okay. But if you start having a house, assets, multiple beneficiaries, it's always good to talk to a legal professional and then also talk to a financial professional um, so that you can just make sure and have that peace of mind.
All right. All right. Well, that's powerful. So let's ask you some fun questions. Oh my goodness. If me and you took a trip to South Africa, where would you take me? What would you want me to see?
I take you to Table Mountain, one of the wonders of the world, seven wonders of the world. Um, Also, I'll take you to Cape Town because that's where I was born. We have wonderful wine estates in Stellenbosch, Somerset West. The beaches are pristine. So that's where I would take you. I would take you to Durban, see some the culture there. And then I'll take you to Johannesburg. It's the sort of the equivalent of LA or New York, multicultural, and the gateway to Africa. In inland, I would take you to a wild game reserve so that you could see some of the big five rhinoceros, elephants, what else? Giraffe, those kinds of things.
Oh, beautiful. Well, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I'm ready to go. If you were an appliance in the kitchen, Suzanne, what appliance would you be?
I'd be the kettle
The kettle. Why?
because I'd be bubbling under, and when I'm about to boil, I would whistle and make sure that you understand that there's something that needs to be taken care of.
All right. Well, that's good. If you were a flower in the garden, what flower would you be?
I'd be a lily,
Oh, a regular lily or a calla lily or
an atom lily.
hmm, okay, that's beautiful. If you were an animal, what animal would you be?
Ooh, I'd be a big cat lioness.
Yes. Hmm. Why? Quick and swift
Ah,
predator? What? Why?
I'm a little bit protective, but I'm also a predator in terms of making sure that my clients are protected and my loved ones are protected. So make sure that that happens. But I can also be a little big pussycat.
Oh boy. If you were doing anything outside of what you're doing, what else would be your zone of genius? Are you an artist? Are you a musician? Are you a great cook?
I love cooking and baking. My daughter says I'm the best baker in the world.
Mm, that's good.
And yeah, I love cooking.
Well, I love you. I really, really do. And thank you for answering these questions. These are hard topics. At least if you hear it from the outside, you have an opportunity to work on the inside. Whatever your wishes and desires are, those are your wishes and they're your desires. Don't fight and argue with people over their stuff. Really? Really. If it is for you, they have laid it out so that you can get it seamless and timeless. If there is an issue, work with great people like Suzanne Daniels that knows her stuff, not only financially, but also legally, that she is able to walk you through the process, answer the questions, and if you can't, do it beforehand. Have the tough conversation. It can be ambiguous, it can gloss over, but there will, excuse me, there will be so much that will be revealed. And it'll take all the guesswork out. And you can lay there and they could always say, well, April doesn't have to turn over in her grave because everything's working out just fine. Suzanne, please tell my brains how to get in contact with you. They want to, have a consultation with you. They want to hire you. I'd love for them to work with you.
Well, Brains, you can reach out to me on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I also have a website. I'll put all the links in the show notes for you, and you can book directly on my calendar for a complimentary 30-minute session.
Take advantage of it, brains. I'm telling you, I bring you the best and the brightest from around the world. And she knows what it is growing up in South Africa with apartheid and now living in Los Angeles, California. There is a big difference in the rand and the dollar. And she'll help you color in the white spaces in between to make sure that there's a financial legacy that you can leave for your family, for your kids, and you can have peace of mind. Thank you so much, Suzanne Daniels. You are the best. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, April, and thank you, Brains, for spending the time with us.
Yes. Go in and pay me what you owe me. Love, like, share, and subscribe. Please raise those numbers. We are doing fantastic on YouTube, and I'm not a YouTube video blogger. I'm a podcaster, but I am on Spreaker, I'm on Apple, I'm on Google, I'm on Spotify, about 20 different outlets. So go in, click, listen to the shows, leave a comment, leave questions for Suzanne. This is how she sharpens her knife so that she is, or should I say, put water in her kettle so that she can spout off. All right, brains. I'll talk to you again soon. I love you guys so much. I truly do.